Former California State Representative. Chuck, good to see you. Listen, I mean, you look at these crazy policies coming out of California. We're going to actually get rid of gas-fueled cars by 2035, but they can't charge EVs this weekend. What do you make of that story?
Well, Sean, if you think it's bad now, wait until that mandate goes into place. We only have about 600,000 electric vehicles in California so far. That's about 3% of all the vehicles on the road in the Golden State. If you start adding about 2 million per year, that's going to put tremendous strain on the electric grid. About 2 million is how many new cars are sold in California every year. So just think about the problem now with 600,000 and then increase that by 2 million a year. It's going to cost the average household probably a minimum of $300 a year to pay for the grid upgrades, for the new power plants, for the extra batteries to keep that grid energized. And the reason why they're asking people not to charge their cars when they get home is the sun starts going down. And so California's abundant solar energy begins to peter out about the time that people get home from work. And if you have an EV, that's the time you're going to want to charge your car. And if everyone plugs in their cars at the same time, that would increase the strain on the grid by about 14% just at the time when the grid's starting to run out of juice.
Yeah, you know, you have a grid that's, to your point, failing. And you have even people like Elon Musk going, listen, this is a slow transition. You can't mandate a transition like this away from fossil fuels to green energy when you're not ready, because the consequences of that for an economy and for families is going to be catastrophic.
Well, right. And think about the implications nationally. This policy isn't just going to be confined to California. It's expected that the Biden administration is going to grant California a waiver to the Clean Air Act. And when they do that, that essentially makes California policy completely determined by an unelected bureaucracy on the California Air Resources Board. And it's going to impose that policy, Sean, nationwide by 2035. Now, a future president can always deny the waiver. But that's the practical effect. This will not be confined to California. This bad idea is going to go national, and it's going to have massive negative implications for the national electric grid and for electricity affordability.
And Chuck, I think that's an important point. I brought you on today because you used to be from California. You saw the craziness, and you're like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to Texas. But it seems, to your point, that you're not going to be able to get away from the crazy policies because they're going to be implemented everywhere. So there's not a Texas I can go to. There's not a Florida that I can go to if this is going to be implemented everywhere in the country.
Well, and that's why it's so important that people pay attention to this sort of thing. We have elections coming up this November, obviously in 2 more years elections. There's always the possibility that Congress and a future president could change course. But, of course, we're now hearing continuously that Governor Gavin Newsom of California is looking at running for the presidency. And so, you know, if you think these California policies are crazy, watch out, because you have a big advocate for these crazy policies that may end up becoming president. And that would have major negative implications for America's quality of life, for the ability of people to, earn enough money to buy a home or to send their children to college. This is something that people, I think, are rapidly becoming is not theoretical. Energy costs under this president, specifically electrical costs, are going up even faster than the rate of inflation. And that is because of these environmental policies that are focused on reducing carbon emissions, not focused on reducing pollution that actually harms human health, but carbon emissions. And that's one of the big drivers of these rapidly rising electrical costs around the country.
I think it's important to say, how do these policies actually work for the American people or for Californians, and whether it's, the policies in regard to crime or homelessness or drug use or now energy. You look at the implication of those policies, whether it's looking at L.A. or San Francisco, and you have rotting cities. Do we want the country to rot like San Francisco is or L.A. is? And if we go this route, the whole country is going to be like these cities in California.
Well, Sean, with energy, it's even more interesting because unlike pollution, traditional pollution as we think of it, where you look up and the sky looks brown and your lungs hurt, that actually harms human health. But when we talk about greenhouse gas emissions, that truly is a global, not a local problem. And one of the things that I think Americans just need to understand is that China today gets 5.3 times more electricity from coal than we do in America. That's over 5 times. And Sean, they are building the equivalent of our entire coal fleet today in China. So any gains we have here will be wiped out.
It's insanity. That's right. It's a global problem, and you can't just deal with America. Chuck DeVore, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. More Kudlow right ahead.